One of the many mysteries in the 40k timeline takes us all the way back to before the Great Crusade even begins, during the Wars of Unification. The Emperor first reveals himself truly to humanity as what we know as the Emperor for the first time during this time period. Instead of working in the background, he takes a direct approach, and he does so leading a military force. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this long-winded thought ramble on the Thunder Warriors, the military force of the Unification Wars. The more you learn about Thunder Warriors, the more questions that do pop up. They're a bit of a mystery, in a way. I mean, on the one hand, we know exactly what we need to know about them. On the other hand, why? Right? And if you don't know too much about the Thunder Warriors, you'll have a basic understanding as we go through this ramble. And you can also still feel free to share your thoughts. So, if you like what you see, you can always hit that like button. If you want to be a source of motivation, definitely hit that subscribe button if you feel it's worth your time to do so. Hopefully, you'll find it to be the case. And, of course, most importantly, be part of the conversation by posting your thoughts in the comment section below. So, with all of that said, let's check out the Thunder Warriors. I'm going to do so in a series of 4 different topics during this long-winded ramble. Firstly, what are they? Attributes, so on and so forth. What are Thunder Warriors? Secondly, why are they stronger than even Astartes? Spoiler alert, physically they are. Why is that the case? / why wouldn't Space Marines be this strong? And then, why were they made in the first place, right? Because they are a footnote created purely to be victorious in the Unification era, to unify Terra under the Emperor's rule. That's all they created, or were created for. That's all they existed for. So why even make them in the first place and not just make Space Marines or whatever? And then lastly, for a bit of fun, I want to give you what I originally thought when we heard about Enhanced Space Marines for 8th edition, and what that could have meant for Thunder Warrior lore, but never came to be. As we know, Primaris went a different path. Still cool, but anyways, we'll get to that last. So, what the heck are Thunder Warriors? Especially considering the first creations of the Emperor are heavily set up in the fluff nowadays to have been the Custodes. They were always with them since we knew about the Emperor, basically, it seems. With Constantine Valdar heavily set up to be the first of 10,000, not just because he lead them, but also because he's the first Custodes created. It's heavily implied now. So if he was able to make peerless, flawless beings that the Custodes are, well, what are these Thunder Warriors then? So a Thunder Warrior shares a lot in common with a Space Marine. Where a Custodes is created and crafted, you could say handcrafted from the ground up, Astartes and Thunder Warriors are just enhanced humans. Previously existing humans enhanced to superhuman levels. Astartes do so via gene seed, and they are transhuman super soldiers and are enhanced in every capability to be superior to humanity in every way, and they are. Where Thunder Warriors are enhanced humans without gene seed, just kind of generic enhancements to be physically powerful. They are only enhanced to be a tool of warfare, and therefore, with a lot of gritty, close combat happening during the Unification Wars, they were enhanced to be physical powerhouses. So they were created to be larger, stronger, faster, durable, resilient to disease and environmental effects, resilient to psychic attacks, which is interesting. Raw aggression, violence, cold-blooded killer mentality with warfare strategery as well in their midst. But that's it. Very one-dimensional, very much hit or miss everywhere else. They're not dim-witted or dumb necessarily either. That's on a case-by-case basis. Where Astartes are not dim-witted or dumb either, Astartes are enhanced to be superior on all levels, not just physically, but mentally, psychologically, morally, and so forth, supposedly, right? That I say supposedly for the morally part, but they are enhanced to be superhuman in every conceivable way, true transhuman super soldiers, where Thunder Warriors are just pure physical aggression and power to overpower the enemy, and that's it. Very one-dimensional, very much a tool of warfare that doesn't know how to do anything else. So that's the one difference. The other difference is, as I mentioned, it's just generic enhancements. They don't have gene seed. They are not connected to the Emperor in any way. The Emperor made these guys to be temporary disposable things. Therefore, he did not put his gene essence in there at all. Custodes, based off of his genome. Primarchs, his sons, right? Astartes, his grandkids, if you will. But the Thunder Warriors, none of that. No gene seed, no genetic legacy of any sort in that regard. And the other strike against them for being unstable and flawed like they are is that they were created not from adolescent young boys, but from adult males. The whole reason that the Space Marines utilize children basically as the beginnings for the process of becoming a Space Marine is because the gene seed and organ implantation is able to grow and mature with the body, resulting in a much more stable platform with a much higher degree of efficient success in it taking. Now, we know in the lore of creating Space Marines that not every neophyte that gets implanted with the genes, the gene seed and the organs, survive the transformation process. But it's stable enough where many do, and it results in a very stable Space Marine. Even things like Space Wolves and Blood Angels, where the Space Wolves have the whole Wolfen Curse concept, and Blood Angels have the gene curse of the Black Rage and Red Thirst, are stable platforms when you think about it, with Blood Angels having some of the longest lived warriors known in the Space Marines of 40k. So they're very stable. Thunder Warriors are gene enhanced adult males. Their body is not malleable and flexible enough to really cope with all the enhancements. They are enhanced just in one way and really pushed to the limit with that enhancement and beyond limits. As a result, there's a lot of mental instability that happens, as well as genetic breakdown from a few years to at most a few decades before some type of biological catastrophic failure happens at an undetermined point in time. It's not set in stone. It's very erratic. But the metabolic functions, their genetic makeup, their biological selves break down. Their mental stability breaks down. They're not very disciplined from the get-go anyway because they're already set in their ways being adult men, probably killers already, or soldiers already. So they may have some training prior to this or something. They have a past life, a fully lived past life, which does not lead to the iron will discipline of what Astartes have. They're just not as disciplined. Then they have this instability mentally and the breakdown of their biological makeup. Quite the flaws to have. Very short-lived temporary warriors, which benefits the Emperor because he didn't need them after unifying Terra. That's all they were there for. Now, I don't think he designed this deliberately in terms of having this kind of kill switch. And so far as if he did design it deliberately, I think we would see it in the fluff be stated as 2 decades after being created, they start suffering breakdowns or something like that. This is very much erratically, unpredictably. So I don't think the Emperor would have had it be so unpredictable. I think he would have had a very clear cut if he designed it. I do think, however, he knew full well this would happen and just didn't care. That's very 40k. So I think that's definitely what happened because he was going to dispose of them anyway. And we know after the Unification War successfully concluded, the Thunder Warriors were purged in a culling. And it was covered up as being that they died to a man in the final battle to achieve victory in a very bitter conflict, which I'm sure they took heavy casualties then too. But the truth is that they were purged by order of the Emperor, and only a real small amount survived for fluff capability and novel exploration plot point stuff. But anyway, my point is, what they are just physical aggressive, killer, cold-blooded, ruthless warriors above and beyond even Astartes on the physical power level, but they're not enhanced in any other capacity, where Astartes are the true paragon transhuman super soldiers, enhanced in every capacity. So that is what the Thunder Warriors are, a temporary kind of stopgap living weapon. Now, it's interesting because they're not dim-witted. Their intelligence, where Space Marines on the whole, every Space Marine is intelligent. There isn't a dumb chapter, intellect-wise or anything. Despite maybe appearing that way to some people, there really isn't. Thunder Warriors could have that. Thunder Warriors are more individualistic in that regard. If the person that was turned into a Thunder Warrior had great capacity for knowledge, understanding, and intellect, still had it and in this short life could make use of it. If they were just a brute that could kill well, that's all they were. So it was more of a case-by-case basis, you could say. So with that being the case, we kind of have an understanding of what they are. They are not tied to the Emperor in any way. There's no genetic legacy there, right? Custodes, genetic legacy. Primarch, genetic legacy. Astartes, genetic legacy through the Primarch. Nothing for the Thunder Warriors. Very much just a temporary thing, kind of created in the need of that moment. So, with that said, we have seen genetic humans after this. There was the Geno-Chiliad Imperial Army Regiment that was kind of lightly genetically enhanced. Then we had things like Luther, who was heavily genetically enhanced, still not to Astartes level. He was too old to become a Space Marine, so they gave him enhancements as best they could to prolong his lifespan, to increase his capabilities, but not to Astartes levels, right? So, if that's the case, we've seen gene-enhanced humans. So why are Thunder Warriors stronger than Astartes? Not just, oh, hey, he can bench press an extra 50 pounds. No, why is it notable in the fluff and any time that we see an actual conflict, the rare cases of conflict between Thunder Warriors and Astartes actually spelled out for us in the Black Library novel series, does it go poorly for Space Marines? That level of physical power over them. That is the question. They're not as powerful as Custodes. Now, I bring that up because there is some older fluff that goes back and forth of which one was stronger kind of physically and all that. As it stands now in the fluff and the way it'll probably forever stand, Custodes are the peerless beings that they are. Only Primarchs, the literal sons of the Emperor, best them in that capability. However, Astartes are nothing to slouch at, and to be more physically powerful than Astartes is quite the claim and quite the capability. So why, right? Why are they? In fact, you can make a strong case if you wanted to really debate it and state Astartes should be stronger than Thunder Warriors because they get implanted at an early age with the gene seed, with the extra organs, with the muscle growth and skeletal growth being enhanced and sped up and made bigger for them, so they're able to bulk out earlier for longer and actually get stronger perhaps at the end of it when they become fully mature. Yeah, I can see that argument. But this is 40K, so we're not going to use real world arguments here. But the question of why, I think, ultimately boils down to two things: stability and uncaring. What do I mean? The Emperor needs a stable force to conquer the galaxy. That's why the Thunder Warriors were never meant to be that force. Astartes were created with that goal in mind, right? Now, it does become a little wishy-washy when the Primarch project starts, when the Primarch project gets when the Primarchs of the Primarch project get whisked away, and when Astartes are starting to be created by the Emperor. That is hazy in the timeline in comparison to the Unification Wars and when the Thunder Warrior program was stopped, because the Emperor was going to purge them anyway, so at some point he stopped making new Thunder Warriors to replace the losses. So when all this happens in relation to each other, we don't have it really necessarily clear-cut. But he needed a stable force to conquer the galaxy. A long-living, long-lasting, genetically superior super soldier needed to be created, which is what we got in the Astartes. So most of the legions, when they were loyal, were also a pretty good poster child. There are several that really weren't, right? But by and large, as a rule, Legion Astartes were stable, long-lasting, and something that could be rallied behind and used to boost morale and get people, get things really to your cause with these noble, superior, genetically enhanced space knights, right? Thunder Warriors are not that. So stability is why we have Astartes not as strong as Thunder Warriors. Stability is not just because they use Gene Seed and start off with young adolescent boys to become a Space Marine and grow into it, literally. It's not just that. It's also the level of enhancement that they are bestowed with. Now, they're very powerful. We know Space Marines are very powerful in the fluff. It's been basically vomited onto us at every point. You could be reading the Eldar Codex, and somehow you'll learn how strong Space Marines are because it's brought up in some type of conflict or whatever. Probably not literally that, but my point is, if you're not a Space Marine fan, I'm sure you're still well aware of how powerful Space Marines are in the fluff, because they are. But that is probably the limit of their power safely to make a stable, long-lasting Space Marine. And we see enhancements above this with Fabius Bile, for example, where they suffer breakdowns and chaos corruption and all that, but it doesn't really work out well. We've also seen where the growth of a Space Marine from a young adolescent to a battle brother goes wrong, and ultimately they die from it, but we see that they become even larger and stronger, and it kind of goes out of control and ultimately kills the host, right? So, stability is why Astartes power levels, if you will, for physicalness are where they're at. Now, of course, it's still a case-by-case basis. Somebody's frame that is an Astartes might be able to become that much stronger than somebody else's. And through training and stuff, they achieve that. But, by and large, the level they're at is the level they're at for stability. So they can have this long-lasting force. Stability is no such question for Thunder Warriors. They're meant to be a temporary force anyway. So if you're not worried about stability and you don't care about them surviving and lasting, you can push your gene enhancements so much further for physical brutality and durability and capability. So what we are looking at is what happens when you just don't care about the force you're enhancing. And we see it because they're mentally unstable, physical, genetic, biological breakdowns, years to a few decades, unpredictably when it happens, lacking a discipline, which only gets less disciplined as they start suffering degradation mentally and physically. But they're so powerful, it makes up for that, and that's why they are strong as they are. I think, in all honesty, Thunder Warriors could have been made to have been less strong than Astartes, but because of that, be a longer lasting force, if you will. Still be a temporary force because of the fact, but I think they could have pushed them past the limits of what would be safe for genetic degradation, but still have them be at best comparable to an Astartes on that power, in terms of power, raw physical power, and not suffer breakdowns years, literally sometimes a few years after being created, and therefore be a bit more stable for conquering Terra. But given the degradation that would have happened anyway and their lack of discipline from the get-go, and not that they have zero discipline, but they lack it in comparison to Space Marines, you need that extra physical oomph, if you will, to achieve victory on the battlefield against other techno-barbarians, gene-bulked-out warriors. So the Emperor did the very simple, basic calculus of, if fighting genetically enhanced warriors, make even stronger genetically enhanced warriors. Unlike the techno-barbarian warlords, he wasn't worried about his warriors lasting because he had a plan in place already to replace them. So that's why they are stronger than Astartes, because when you don't care about the force to begin with, and they're going to be replaced soon after anyway, you can crank it past the safety net and just go for broke and go crazy with it and make these physical beasts that the Thunder Warriors are, without making them dumb. They're not being made dumb because they're so strong, but they're not really worried about being any type of Renaissance soldier. They're just meant to win a battle and then be discarded after the fact. Very uncaring 40k levels of what their usefulness is for. So that's why they are stronger than Astartes in the first place, in my opinion. Again, I'm just spitballing, theorizing here. Feel free to share your thoughts. So if they were going to be a throwaway force anyway, why even make them? This is very contrary to the Emperor's projects. Pretty much most every project the Emperor takes part in is a very long-reaching, long-term goal endgame type of project. The Primarch project had a purpose, right? Outside of just the Great Crusade. Heresy happens, so we don't get to see it. Custodes, long-living, peerless beings that they are. A very long-term project, slow, took time to build them up. The Imperial Webway project would have been a very long-reaching project as well. So it's not just biologically, but just in general, his stuff tends to be long-reaching. The Great Crusade, a very ambitious long-term project as well. So what we have here is something very at odds with the Emperor's typical projects. And I think the fact that it doesn't have his stamp on it in the form of some type of genetic legacy at all is a real testament to the fact that perhaps the Emperor didn't want these guys to begin with, right? Perhaps he had to make these. Perhaps something in the fluff that we just don't know yet forced him to speed up his timetable a little bit. Because you have to remember, the way the fluff is now, Custodes were created first. It's in that regard, it's very kind of weird why even make Thunder Warriors in the first place if you already have Custodes. Well, we do know that what kind of helped keep Thunder Warriors relevant in the fluff as a little footnote thing that they are anyway is the fact that Custodes took a long time to make and they had relatively few number by the time the Unification War started, and their numbers were slowly being built up. I think if he had more time, he probably would have ideally, I think, been able to craft the Astartes, have what we know as Space Marines be the Unification Wars. Sole military might alongside Custodes. Whether or not the Primarchs would have been whisked away, probably still would have been immaterial, because he still would have had the Astartes in their Proto-Legion format to wage Unification War alongside Custodes and the rest of the Unification forces. But he wasn't given the luxury of having that extra time for whatever reason. That's my own personal theory. So he made these guys because he had to. And since he had to, he pushed it. And he used them as a platform to glean more vital information for what would be the Astartes project, you could say, or the creation of the Legion Astartes. Because the Primarch project, I don't think, really would have benefited from any information from the Thunder Warriors. The Primarch project is such a radically different project. It's like the Custodes project cranked up to 1 million. So he had that covered. But in mass producing a super soldier, I feel the Emperor knew the dangers of using a full adult male body, but had no choice, again, for time. I don't think the Emperor even had the time to enhance young adolescents and have them grow over the years into a elite fighting force. I think he had to take what he had and just enhance it and go, because timetable, whatever reasoning why. So I'm sure the Emperor already knew the dangers of doing this, but decided to play it out in field research of see what goes on and maybe glean some useful information to further streamline his Astartes process. It's very possible the very concept of gene seed implantation was a result of the Thunder Warrior program, seeing that it would streamline the process for genetic enhancement, make it, quote-unquote, not so much easier, but more streamlined, more efficient, and go from there. So ultimately, I think they were made because he needed them and he didn't want them. So instead of just turning them into a force he would use in the long term, he made a very uncharacteristic choice of having a very temporary military force that he could also use for field research and kind of de facto experiment and see how it goes. We know that he ended the Thunder Warrior program at some point during the Unification Wars. Astartes were being produced, and Thunder Warriors were very clearly flawed and degrading and so forth. So at some point, and again, we don't know exactly when, the Emperor stopped the project. When Astartes were enough of a number to actually start doing campaigns and winning battles efficiently, battle after battle in a quicker succession than the less disciplined but yet mighty Thunder Warriors, proof of concept became reality of the Astartes and really proved their overall superiority despite not being as physically mighty. So I think as I said multiple times now, the reason why they're made in the first place is because the Emperor had to, and then it was a good compare and contrast and field research notes to further streamline the Astartes as they are. Would the Astartes be less stable and a bit more flawed without the Thunder Warriors? Ultimately, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure the Emperor knew and understood the dangers of what the Thunder Warriors were, but did it anyway because he didn't care. He was going to get rid of them anyway, and he needed something time now, not time later. So that's why they were made. That's all well and good, but what the heck am I going to be talking about Primaris for, right? Well, when we first heard about 8th edition bringing enhanced Space Marines to the table for the Imperium, it caused a lot of theorizing out there and a lot of hubbub by people, for good or ill. One of the things I thought of when I first heard about this was, I wonder if Thunder Warriors will play a role at all. Not the fact that we have them. We don't have any Thunder Warriors. Not that they're hard to make. I'm sure you could make one in 40k, or like the Biologus could make a Thunder Warrior easy. There's no reason to, because they're inefficient, right? They're not stable. They're not a long-lasting force. Why do that when we already have Space Marines who are very well equipped, trained, and enhanced already? So I don't think we would be seeing Thunder Warriors, but the Thunder Warrior program, the gene research notes in the vault, that I'm sure exists somewhere in the vaults of Terra, that is where we could have seen the legacy of the Thunder Warrior brought to fruition, and kind of utilizing that and hybridizing it and making new organs for these enhanced Space Marines, and kind of reinforcing the legacy of the Thunder Warriors, and by doing so, perhaps also expanding their lore a little bit. There's still a footnote of the Unification Wars. They never got off Terra to fight in campaigns. Their campaigns were solely on Terra. But wouldn't it be interesting to learn about the 20 regiments that the Thunder Warriors were organized into in some capacity, at the very least, via these enhanced Space Marines in 40k? Because yes, the Thunder Warriors were arranged into 20 regiments. Why does that sound familiar? Because the Space Marine Primarchs originally were 20. We have the 2 lost. We know about the 18. So that's 20 Primarchs, and therefore 20 original Space Marine legions, just like the 20 Thunder Warrior regiments. And the Thunder Warrior regiments were only a few hundred strong each, right? So it's not that there was a lot of them to begin with, the cull, but especially with combat losses and degradation and the stopping of the program. But my point is to get back to Primaris in 8th edition and Enhanced Space Marines before we knew them as Primaris and what they were. I was thinking this would have been a great way for GW to introduce a bit more Thunder Warrior lore for us and see just how much of the Thunder Warrior program was adapted into the Space Marine Legions, right? Was there a Thunder Warrior regiment that was yellow, or had a lot of yellow accoutrements, if you will, in their primitive Mark I power armor that later became known as Thunder Armor? In the Outcast Dead, we see Thunder Armor that's purple, worn by, on the cover art, worn by a Thunder Warrior. So, not that that means anything, right? But hey, we do have a purple Space Marine Legion. So, were there any kind of tie-overs in that regard? These are the questions that could have potentially been answered a little bit. Maybe even shed some light into some of the lost legions, right? We could, if they kind of explain to us the 20 regiments of the Thunder Warriors, and talking about the legacy of the Thunder Warrior project and how its applications were being used in a stable format to enhance Space Marines in 40k, and they started talking about the history of Thunder Warriors a little bit, and they broke down all 20 regimental colors, and we saw by and large where some type of link up to the legions. You can make some type of correlation that maybe, not that it became the Space Marine Legions, because they are not related at all, but in terms of, Astartes physiology, gene seed, it's all completely different than Thunder Warriors. But if we saw a weird color get up that we don't see in the Legions, could that have been a potential insight and clue into what maybe one of the Lost Legions looked like? I know, really reaching here, but my point is, it would have been a nice way to open the Thunder Warrior door a little bit and just give us a bit more information and insight to that time period of the Unification Wars, to kind of explain Thunder Warriors a bit and explain how their program research notes were used, how such an unstable force could result in enhancing and keeping stable Space Marines. Would have been neat, but it didn't go that route. It still went a cool route. I just think we lost a real opportunity to really glean some knowledge on what Thunder Warriors were all about, above and beyond what we already know. So that's why I want to bring up Primaris a little bit. Anyways, that's it for the Thunder Warriors. What are they? A temporary stopgap, gene-enhanced super soldier force that took existing adult males and enhanced them physically only to crazy levels, resulting in gene degradation, biological degradation, mental instability, and further ill discipline. Not that they were undisciplined at all, but they weren't as heavily disciplined. And that only is going to get exacerbated when you have the mental instability and breakdowns mentally and physically that they had. So that's what Thunder Warriors are. I touched upon why I think they're stronger, because when you don't care about the force, you don't care about any safeguards to keep them stable, you can just crank it all the way up and deal with the ramifications of the degradation, because you're going to get rid of them anyway. And why were they made in the first place? Well, I personally think they had to be made. And since they had to be made, might as well use them for field research. Anyways, that's my take on the Thunder Warriors. A little bit of background info on them, plus a whole lot of pure theorizing. Most of this video is me theorizing. Basically, their attributes, the fact that they're temporary, the fact that they're physically mightier, that's true. The fact that they are more psychic resistant is true, which would be an interesting footnote if the Primaris Space Marine thing went the Thunder Warrior route, or Thunder Warrior research note route, as opposed to the route they went. But their attributes, that's all in the lore. The fact that they're stronger than Astartes, in the lore. Everything else, as far as why they are stronger and why were they made, well, aside from needing to win the Unification War, is pure spitballing. So please, I'm just saying this so you don't take what I'm saying as, well, that's official canon lore. No, I just took the basics of what we know about them, and I just went down the rabbit hole and started thinking and theorizing. So, by all means, share your own thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree or disagree with anything? Would you have liked to have seen the Primaris Space Marines actually have been enhanced Space Marines because of the Thunder Warrior research notes? Maybe, kind of harking back to the Thunder Warriors, going kind of a bit full circle, maybe getting a bit more Thunder Warrior lore because of it? Or are you fine with how they are now, which is still pretty cool? Anyways, thanks very much for sticking through it. If you made it through the video, then I think you definitely earned the ability to hit that subscribe button. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself and you didn't just stick around out of pure hatred. Anyway, thanks very much for stopping by. Leave any questions or requests in the comment section below. If you have a random question that you just kind of thought of while listening to the ramble and went, well, this isn't going to be very fitting for the topic at hand, there is a Q&A repository in the community tab. Go check it out in the community tab. Leave your question there. Anyway, thanks very much for sticking through this and stopping by. And until next time, take it easy.